Hello, my name is Danny, and like Antoine, I'm a content creator here on YouTube. Speaking of, Antoine was nice enough to help me spread awareness of a terrible but relatively unknown disease called Noma. It only affects the poorest regions, so not many in the developed world even know about it. In fact, up till now, there weren't even any GoFundMe campaigns for it. To help the cause and to learn more, just use the links in the description. We appreciate any support you can give, but now, on to the show.
I like I like the background again.
Hey, that is the benefit of a green screen.
Yeah, yeah. So how's it been going?
Pretty good. I have to give notes to I think I mentioned to you that my novel is being adapted. And the producer was like, "Can you get the notes in? I gotta get the notes in, tomorrow." And I was like, "Oh God, I'm busy and I don't have time." But okay.
All right. Well, I we can just, it's only a half hour talk, so whatever. Um, but yeah. So I sent you my notes, just things I want to talk about. Did you see those?
I did not, but I can riff when it comes to Cora.
Yeah. Okay. Well, one thing that I wanted to talk about. So like eventually I want to do like this whole series about how I think like core is, kind of underrated, gets too much hate. And one video I wanted to do was like about book two in particular, right? Because I mean, book two has its problems. I get that, but I think there's actually a lot there that people don't see. They kind of just skip over because they figure, book two. But one thing that I always thought was like one thing that people talk about is how at the end of book one, Aang gives her the Avatar state, right?
Mhm.
And that she didn't earn it, because of course Aang, he had to do the chakras and everything, but in Korra she just gets it, right? My point is this: she does earn it, but kind of like retroactively. So what I mean is, it's like so in book two, she has, of course she has the Avatar state, right? And of course famously she's kind of like bratty and kind of like short-sighted, and she trusts her uncle too much, right? And that
But I don't even think she trusts her uncle. Like, if you really look back at that show, she had every reason to like trust in her uncle more so than her current mentors, particularly her dad, who wasn't very forthcoming with the whole story and the whole truth about his past. So I think people don't give enough credit to Korra's path to even going with Unalaq. I think it's just like a kind of a brashing. I think the things that are brash about Korra mostly have to do with Mako and a little bit of how she deals with like the North and South Civil War stuff. But in
yeah
terms of her like wanting to be mentored by Unalaq, especially after seeing like what he was capable of doing with the spirits very early on in that season, it actually makes a lot of sense, like why she would do that. And people overlook that a lot about how poor of a job Tenzin and Tonrock were doing with Korra to make her be pushed to that point. And even so, even Unlock wasn't seeming like he was, nefarious or anything up until the middle of that season. So it wasn't like it was a bad choice for her to be mentored by this guy who seemed to be very in touch with spirits in the way that he was.
hmm. Okay, I never even thought of it like that. um but what I was saying was like, okay, so fine. So even so, like, my point is like, so at the end of book two, she gets her ass kicked by Unalaq, and she loses her connection with Rob and everything, um and that leads directly into the events of book three. She gets her ass kicked again. She gets like full on PTSD, and then book four is just like one big like struggle for her. So my point is like that's her earning it. You know what I mean? But like I said, retroactively.
What do you mean by her earning it? Because even in book one, I didn't mind it at all because if you're the Avatar state is the use of previous lives. Like that's the point of the Avatar state is that these other past lives and all their experiences and all their power are filtering through you. Now the difference of it is like whether you mastered it or not. Like, are you being controlled by the Avatar state, or are you yourself, exerting your will in the way that Aang exerted his will over the Avatar state, so that he would not kill Ozai, which basically everyone told him to do, including Yang Chen. But in terms of like the way the ability works itself, it's like, yeah, like that's actually how it works. Is that you're used by these thousands of, well, not really thousands, if you actually look at the numbers, it's actually far fewer than that, but these generations of avatars that are filtering through you. That's the key component of the avatar state. So it's always weird when I hear that idea of like it was given, a kind of thing. And also the fact that she was able to, if you want to talk about like the chakra thing, which was Aang's whole thing, is that he needed to unlock all his chakras. One can say that that's what she did when she overtook Amon. When because some people say that that's like, and I even to the extent I do as well, is that it's a little bit of a Deus ex machina at the end where she defeats Amon just through sheer force of will and because the plot demanded it. But I mean, if you really want to like get into it, and you should really talk to, I don't know if you know Airspeed Prime. He's another AvaTuber who is super, super in depth about a lot of stuff, especially with book 2 in particular. Like she actually favors book 2 of all the books in Korra, which is a very unique perspective in the Avatar fan base. And I always send people to his channel because he does a very good job. I think I still don't agree with him. I still don't find book 2 to be my favorite. It's my least favorite of Korra, but I really want his voice to be out there, and it should be investigated, because I think we get far too dismissive of book 2 in particular of Korra, and then also broadly overall Korra in general. And also I lost my train of thought of why I even started talking about this, because I know I had a point.
The Avatar state.
Yeah, I was going to something. I forgot what I was going to say, but yeah, I forgot what I was going to say about her earning the Avatar state. Oh yeah, and the fact that the way that she defeated Amon was through airbending, which is the thing that she had not unlocked, which would be the one thing that he wouldn't have blocked. But we don't really know how his ability works. So that becomes, the idea of headcanon. And that is another critique that I would lay against Korra, is that a lot of things do have to be, a little, kind of explained in your head. I mean, you can figure it out if you're really looking deeply into the series. You can say, oh, well, that chakra wasn't blocked because she hadn't learned air yet, and she was able to unleash that because she finally figured it out. But then the show doesn't explicitly say that in the same way that they explain the rules in the original series with all the magic systems and the sub magic systems for all the elements.
Yeah, my headcanon for why she's suddenly able to get airbending is Amon doesn't turn the chakras off so much as he flicks a switch, right? And
I always thought it was more of a block, in the same way that chi blocking, because the initial idea is that we thought that he was extraordinary chi blocker, right? Before we knew that he was a bloodbender. But the idea that I thought is that he was blocking the chi paths via blood clots or whatever you want to say. Because if it was actual blood clots, people would just die. But if in the magical sense, I the way I always interpreted it is that he was blocking people's chi paths via whatever chi that they harness, whether it's the fire element or the earth element. Because I think the earth element is root, fire is heart. I can't remember what all the chakra alignments are, but basically, in my head, he's just blocking those chakra paths so that they can't do that element.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is he never had to do an avatar before, right? He only had to
single element users,
yeah, and all he knew how to do, because all he needed to know how to do was just flick a switch off, right? But what I'm saying is maybe the way it works is I don't know, the magic, whatever the thought process that can flick the chakra switch off, what do you want to call it, can also switch it on, right? And he didn't realize that because, again, he never had to chi block an avatar before. You know what I mean? So he turned the other 3 elements off, but he accidentally turned the air one on. Is my headcanon. Maybe I don't know if I'm explaining that particularly well, but
no, that's fine. And also even extending that to the very end where Korra achieves the Avatar state, I think people take that too literally, because we see the physical manifestation of Aang and all the other avatars, and you see him physically, hitting her with the thumb on the forehead and giving her the ability. But really, in quote unquote reality, that's all happening internally in Korra's mind. So Korra is actually doing that herself. It's just that maybe the way that it's presented seems more like she was just given, but really it's all of her own internal struggle. The fact that she was at her lowest point, that she was able to open up, is still her, because it's her internal thought, it's her internal struggle that is allowing for that to be opened up.
Yeah, I think it's just the way it's presented. I think that's just what makes a lot of people they just don't like it, because again, and going back to Last Airbender,
I was gonna say Airbender too. Yeah, go ahead. I have another thing about Airbender for that same thing.
Yeah, but with Airbender, again, you had the whole chakras with the guru, Patik, that was his name. And Aang had to do this whole thing, and then he couldn't open up his last one because he couldn't let go of Katara, but then he did, and he gets shot by lightning, and it's a whole thing, right? Whereas with Korra, I think a lot of people just see it as, oh, Aang just comes up and he boops and he touches her on the forehead, and there she goes. But
Yeah, I mean,
it's not
also
that
just
simple.
keep the same energy. Like if you're gonna say that, oh, I don't like it because Korra was just giving it, like, well, then keep the same energy about that rock that Aang, miraculously fell on that to open up his last chakra. Like, I mean, if you want to have that critique, as long as you're laying that same critique to Aang, I'm like, all right, fair play. But if you're not, then I'm like, okay, then there's a little bit of a bias there.
Yeah, there are some things with that last Airbender that do bother me. That always bothered me, and there are other things. Actually, there was one thing I want to talk about today, but we'll get to it with last Airbender. But another point I wanted to mention was like I kind of drew on this earlier, was this is like a in a similar vein to this. A lot of people what was it? Hold on a second. Let me go back to see my notes. So yeah, okay. So in book 2, of course, a lot of people really don't like the fact that her personality basically resets in the beginning of book 2.
That's another critique I have as well. Yeah, it's definitely feels like a reset.
She's just so bratty again all of a sudden. But I don't necessarily mind that. She is bratty in book 2. I'm not saying she isn't, but I don't mind that because it gives us like a whole new paradigm, because she's still bratty, she's childish, but she also has all the power of the Avatar, And my point is, like, we've never had that before, right? Of course, we had Last Airbender, where Aang doesn't get the power until he's gone through his whole arc. But this is kind of like the opposite extreme, and it's like, what can you do with that? You know what I mean? As opposed to doing the same thing over again.
But then the question is, was the execution compelling for you? Wasn't it intriguing enough for you? And I don't feel like there was enough there for me personally that I didn't already get from book 1. Like, I feel like we had already gotten past that. Like, it was just a retread. But I also understand why they like that. It feels like a first draft kind of a thing, and they were rushed to do book 2. So I don't like begrudge too much on that, because I still enjoy some of the content that was in book 2, particularly the beginnings episodes. But I wasn't really a fan of like the no attack. Oh, I forgot the freaking Bolin mover.
Oh, Nuktuk.
Nuktuk. Yeah, it wasn't like, I felt like everyone was kind of like they were still trying to like refine the story again, which they did. If you look at book 3, like it definitely feels like a stumble to me. Like book 2, like book 1, I felt like was extremely solid. There's a few like things at the end I was like, oh, I probably would have chose something different. But like ultimately, I think that first book is really, really, really strong.
Oh yeah.
Book 2 feels like a stumble. Feels like they're still like clearing their throat again. Like, oh wait, let's get back into court. Let's like figure out like what we were doing with the series, because they were not expecting to have to do a continuation of the series. They were thinking it was just gonna be the one and done. And then book 3, when they've gotten their footing again, then you're like, oh, this is them hitting on all cylinders, and this is like what Avatar is like. And I always know that is the capability of the show, and also when it's not at its like best, even with book 2, like I even would venture like, okay, what were you watching during that time period that was better? Like where people was like, oh man, it was such like there's so many other like better shows. I'm like, what? Which ones like are you referring to? Because like still even Airbender, Avatar, Korra, like when it's at its worst, is still like extremely solid entertainment and storytelling. So I just always am baffled by like what the alternative is, especially during that time period.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I've seen some of like the core hater videos, and a lot of the stuff they say, I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Yeah. I'm sure if I thought about it, I could probably come up with a few examples. But
they're usually just like nitpicking and very superficial, oftentimes. Or disingenuous, just playing into the hate mongering that happens on YouTube, because that's what it likes. The algorithm likes that kind of stuff because it has high engagement.
Yeah, that's true. But so my point is this, like, and this is kind of getting back to what I was saying about her like earning it retroactively, which is like, if you're really bothered with how she was in early book 2, and I definitely get that. My point is this, like, her behavior leads directly to the events at the end of the book, which is basically almost her demise, right? But then those events also lead to all the other stuff in books 3 and 4, and again, she keeps getting like her ass kicked, completely kicked, like again and again. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I guess my point is like, if hey, if you hated her in book 2, guess what? You know, you can take consolation in the fact that she pays for the rest of the series.
But then there's also, I think, a lot of context that gets left out with Korra, because I've heard that so often. It's like she gets her ass kicked all the time. But then if you look at the times that she had her ass kicked, there was like reason behind it. Like if you look at like the Tarlock stuff, well, it's a bloodbender. Like you can't really do much about a bloodbender. With Zahir in particular, people always tend to forget that she was poisoned and near death. Like she was dying as she was fighting him. Like it wasn't a case of she was at full strength. Like she literally had that poison coursing through her blood and literally fighting against, even using, the Avatar state, because she didn't want to have to be, killed and having the entire thing be destroyed. That stuff, sometimes that context just never shows up when people say that. Like, it's just very interesting to me that the context of her fights, just the outcomes, but not the journey.
Yeah. She wins, sure, but like, how does she get there? And it's like, it's like and of course,
no, with Zahir, well, at least with the Zahir example, she doesn't win. Like she legitimately loses. She succumbs to the poison. But like she was putting up a goddamn good fight for someone who was dying. Like people don't realize she was dying during those 5, 6, 7 minutes that they were fighting. In that mountain range.
Yeah,
she was literally dying. Like I don't know how they could have better expressed that, but they did it. I think they did it like visually pretty well. Like when she's like mid-flight and she's like like clutching her chest, stuff like that. Or when you see the freaking platinum, like, or whatever I forget what the poison they use.
It was mercury.
Mercury, yeah. When the mercury, you see it seeping into her veins and you see her hallucinating. Like, girl was fighting off death at the same time while facing this entirely new bender who they've never seen before, who's this unassisted flight airbender. Yeah, it just bugs me sometimes, so many times when people just talk about like the ass kickery, but not giving the context of.
Yeah. That's why it bothers me so much. People say. That's why it bothers me so much when people say she's a Mary Sue, and it's like, how? I mean,
yeah, that's and that's the funny thing too. They're not even consistent. A lot of these haters aren't even consistent with what they say, which is just very baffling.
I know you made a video on this a while back, but I think a lot of it comes from, again, just the book 1 family, the fact that she gets the other 3 elements back and she gets the Avatar say. I think that's a lot of where it comes from, but like you're ignoring so much. I mean, if you want to call like Ray or Captain Marvel Mary Sue, yeah, sure.
Yeah, those are actually valid.
And
on several fronts, because Mary Sue isn't just about like just your power scaling and who you can defeat, but also socially, like everyone just loves you. Like that's part of being a Mary Sue, is that every single character you interact with loves you. Who the fuck loves Korra? And that like she breaks up with her her boyfriend like breaks up with her. She almost loses the Avatar state, or she loses her connection to the past lives. Which another thing that people leave out context. They always say like, oh my gosh, she killed the Avatar. I'm like, no, Unalaq did that. It's almost like victimizing someone who's on the opposite end of abuse or assault, and you're like, oh, like you asked for it or you put yourself in that position. It's like, no, how about we blame the person who actually did it, the actual villain who actually severed the past lives? That's another thing that bugs me too. Like it's just a lot of the, like I said before, the hate mongering that surrounds Korra isn't constructive most of the time. It's very it goes straight to the side of the internet, or the way that arguments happen in certain avenues of the internet that are just so unproductive, in my opinion, and disingenuous, in my opinion as well. That just bugged me the most about it.
Yeah, I think when people who don't like the show and don't like her, I think when they picture Korra as the person, I think they mostly think of her in the early 2 books, because they talk about, like she's so bratty, she's so angry.
Well, that's when most people end it.
But
that's when they left the show, is after book 2, and then they didn't continue on to like the best season of Korra. Which
that's what I'm saying. Is like book 3 and book 4, especially book 4. She's just so different. She's just so much better. I mean, she's just this grizzled, much more mature person. And I think if we get a lot more out of it is if they just watched the latter 2 books, or like really paid attention to them at least.
Yeah, and what they dealt with PTSD too was huge, because you don't see that a lot in hero stories. Like you see the heroism, and then you're like, all right, cool, they're good. It's like, no, they like she legit was on the edge of death. Like that stuff's gonna mess you up. Like, and it's gonna mess up your confidence too. Like, and they actually dealt with that, and they actually like went through that fully before she went on to continue the last acts of heroism. But like you miss all of that if you just checked out.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much all of book 4 is just her slowly recovering. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not like it's just one and done. She's good. No, she like it's been a while, but yeah, she has to like go to Toph and get the Mercury up, but even that's not enough because she goes. I think after that she goes. I think it's before she fights
she fights Kuvira, and then she's about to win, but then she sees herself in Kuvira because of the way that she's acting. Like she's basically seeing book 1, book 2 Korra in Kuvira, and then she and that's another context of fight that people leave out too. It's like, she got me by Kuvira. It's like, did you not see that she was about to hit her with a big ass boulder, and then she like stopped because she saw herself in it? It's like the same thing that happened with like Luke in Star Wars, when he was about to defeat Vader, and then or in the cave and he sees his own face.
In Empire,
same sort of tropes, right? Yeah, just every time there's a core fight, like you only hear about the outcomes, but not like the lead up or the journey of the fight.
Yeah, and then she has to go. And then she has to go to Zahir to find
and then
her old enemy.
That was so good. Like stuff like that, like going to your old villains. That's something that you see a lot in like a Batman or Spider-Man, where they consult with maybe some of the. It's kind of like going with if you have a relationship with somebody, like a romantic relationship, and you broke up with them like years ago, right? But you never had that closure, so you go back to like just have that last conversation, so you have that closure. It's that kind of a thing, and I think that stuff is just so good. Like I think they did that really mature themes of going through something like that really well in that show, and it doesn't get credit for it, I think.
Yeah, that's why book 4 is my favorite. Everyone loves book 3, and I definitely get that, but book 4 is my favorite. That's just me. All right, one last thing, switching over to Last Airbender now. I mentioned before there are some things with that show that bother me that no one ever talks about. And the thing that most bothers me, I never hear anyone talk about it, is so the last Agni Kai, right? That's Agni Kai, the first 95% of it is great. But then, of course, you have Azula shooting her lightning at Katara. Zuko blocks it, and he goes down. And then, of course, Katara and Azula fight, and Katara takes Azula down. That always bothered me so much because the entire show was setting up Azula as Zuko's foil. She was everything he wasn't. As Ozai himself said, she was born lucky, he was lucky to be born. You know what I mean? They had a literal sibling rivalry. This was just so personal for him. Azula was Zuko's enemy to defeat, not Katara's. But I don't know. What do you think about that?
That's true. But the way I see it is that it's more that Zuko, like, okay, so let's look at the context of what happened at the end of that sequence. Leading up to that, we saw her banishing everyone. Like Azula was like, I don't trust anybody, like because of how she acquired her power. Because everybody wants to say, oh, Azula's so great and she's such a mastermind at gaining pieces and infiltrating. But really, she's not. She is. She definitely has that skill set.
She was
the way in which she's acquiring that. Well, yeah, because of her, she goes a little bit cuckoo brain. Yes. But even beyond that, it's the way that she acquired that power. She acquires it through fear and intimidation. And if you do that enough and you do that too much, you're going to lose your allies, which is what happens little by little, right? So May opposes her, Ty Lee, and then she's like, whoa, okay, if my closest confidants are doing it, it can happen. And that's what happens to a person who leads the way that she does with such an iron fist. So at the end of that, she has absolutely no one at her side. She has no one at her side. Zuko has learned through his journey to lean on others, not just to be the loner. That's the big thing of his arc in book 2, is that he was like, I'm going to go my own way, Uncle Iroh, when they have their little breakup, and then they come back. So in that way, the way that I see that scene and the difference between their wins and not wins and that fight is that Zuko was okay with leaning on someone else and protecting someone else in the way that Azula probably would have never done. Like if it was a context of like May or Ty Lee being in that situation, I don't know if Azula would save. Maybe she'll save them because she's got the skill set to do it. But if she knew that she might have potentially, like if it was like a great spirit that she was fighting,
would she do it out of the goodness of her heart, is what you're saying,
right? Like she will only do it out of like, oh, I can do that because I'm skillful enough to be able to do that, versus it being like, no, I want to save my friend, kind of a thing. So for me, like that scene was more of a case of showcasing that Zuko was there for someone else, not just for himself, which is what he was looking for honor for himself all the way up until that point of the series. And the difference was him bringing an ally, having an ally, relying on an ally, versus Azula who doesn't and has all
Well, here's what I would have done, because I mean, at the very beginning of the fight, Izuku and Katara fly up on Appa, and of course Azula's about to be crowned, and there was like a royal court or whatever you want to call it around here. So
I
there
think
are
it's the
some
sages.
people.
I think it's the fire sages that were crowning her. The only ones who
Yeah,
were
so
left,
there are
the
some people
sages.
around here, but like my point is this: like, here's what I would have done. So you get to the point where Azula, she shoots her lightning at Katara, right? Zuko blocks it, but instead of just like taking it into the chest, he redirects it, right? Like he redirected with Ozai. He can redirect lightning on the fly. He redirects it, right? Shoots it back at Azula, but she dodges it, and now she's really sputtering. And now she's like, okay, like maybe there are some guards or like the fire stages, the fire stages, right? The fire stages are still there, right? And she's like, fire
Yeah,
stages,
those are the only ones
go
who
and attack,
are there. Yeah.
right? So she sends the fire stages in, and that's where Katara comes in. She plays defense with the fire stages, meanwhile Zuko and Azula can keep fighting, right? That's what I would have done. And then at the very end, maybe what happens is like Katara sees Azula has Zuko on the ropes, right? So what Katara does, but she also sees Azula like charging for another lightning blast, right? So what Katara does is she splashes water at Azula's feet. Zuko sees this, and Azula shoots her lightning. Zuko redirects it at the water at her feet, and it electrocutes her. It doesn't kill her, but it incapacitates her, right? And then she goes down. That's maybe something like that is what I would have done. So you get the best of both worlds. You still get Zuko defeating Azula, which is what should have happened, but you still have Katara playing an important role. And like you said, he's still relying on her. They're still working as a team.
Yeah, and just to go back to what you're saying about the direction, I think the reason why he couldn't direct it is because he left his feet. I don't know if that's part of the technique, like in like explicit lore, but he like leapt to do it. So he wasn't grounded. There was nowhere for him to shoot the lightning out because he was not grounded, in the same way that you are usually grounded with the technique. Again, I don't think that's anything that's like established necessarily like within the magic system. I don't think Iroh ever says that when he teaches him in bitter work. But that was in my like visually, like the fact that he leapt up was the reason why he couldn't. I mean, honestly, he probably should have died. Honestly, like yeah. there's a lot of plot armor that happened towards the end of that series. Because it's like, well, okay, you have nowhere to redirect it, which means it has to be now in your body, and that you should be dead. And she was able to charge it. I mean, we're talking about Agni Kai enhanced lightning, and she had time to charge it up. It wasn't like she did like a quick like a blast or whatever, right? It was a charged up. I think she did twice. I think she I don't remember I'm trying to think back to the scene, but I think she charged it up twice. She's boosted by Agni Kai. Zuko should be dead. Like in that context, he should definitely have been dead.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in my version he would have stayed on the ground. It's even funny. It's kind of a nitpick, but if you actually watch the scene, like the lightning is moving, but he's running. So like lightning moves at the speed of light.
Yeah, way faster. Yeah, so like Zuko just went Jedi speed, like really fast. Yeah.
So I don't know.
As fast as a Jedi in that split second. But again, that's drama. That's stuff. And then I don't begrudge. So that thing too. People often talk on extremes and polar opposites, right? Like it's got to be the best or it's got to be the worst, right? And usually the case is like you have to either say Airbender is perfect and Korra is trash, when really it's like a spectrum of stuff. And there's a lot of in between, and both things should be able to be critiqued and both things should be able to be praised. And just hope, because now we're going to get a whole lot more Avatar, in the future, that we get a more nuanced approach to looking at these stories than just like looking for best or worst, like when most things are kind of like in the middle, honestly.
If I had to rate both shows on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd probably give Last Airbender like a 9.5, I think, because obviously it's great, but it's not perfect, like I was just saying. Korra, I'd probably give like an 8 or 8.5, something like that. So what about you? What do you think you would give the shows
ranking wise? I don't usually do like numeral rankings like that, but I will say I have a deeper emotional connection with Korra, though with Airbender it's a more complete story. Korra always hits me different. Like anytime I watch it, like I actually
there's definitely some intense scenes with that show.
Yeah, there's a lot of intense scenes in it, and maybe it's just because it's got a slightly more mature, tone to it, and the things that they're trying to deal with, like even like some of the philosophies. Like each time Korra is faced with a different antagonist, it's a different philosophy that she's like going against. So that stuff it engages me more that way. Though I feel that Airbender is a more complete, cohesive story, like altogether.
Yeah.
But Korra hits me harder. Like when it has its highs and its lows, like both of those hit me like harder than Airbender, where I feel like it's mostly like, oh, okay, so it's like a spectrum of like this with Airbender, like it's like a kind of like a steady wave, and then with Korra, I have like a this like going on, right?
Yeah, like I think one of the problems with Core is like it sometimes it does the same ideas, it just doesn't present it the same, or doesn't present it as well. Like a
Right.
good comparison would be like Last Airbender, the book one finale, when Aang becomes one with the koi fish and he becomes
Yeah, Koizilla, which is
Sala.
actually the canon name for it, which is I didn't realize that. I thought it
What
was
is it? Koizilla?
Koizilla, which I didn't realize is actually like the actual term. I thought it was just like the funny thing that we all say in the fan base. But I was like, oh wait, no, actually they actually in the art of the animated series, the name of the bean is actually Koizilla, which is crazy.
I did not know that. But anyway, so there's that. But then at the end of book two, there's a similar thing where Korra, becomes a giant spirit monster thing, and she fights Unalaq, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like those are both basically the same things. But Last Airbender did a lot better because of visual storytelling, right? Like Last
Right.
Airbender, the way they did it, you could understand just visually. Oh, okay, this is what's happening and why. So it just works a lot better. Korra is just kind of like, oh, I'm gonna just meditate in this tree, and then I'm gonna walk out and become a giant spirit thing. And they it's the same idea, but they should.
But we don't have any context for the spirit tree outside of just that one episode or the beginnings episode, right? In the same way that you had context for the moon and ocean spirit, so you had a little bit more context about like what magic is happening, that he's merging with the ocean spirit to become Koizilla.
Yeah. So yeah, you get it. But like, basically, what I'm saying is, it's just all done to visual storytelling a lot of the times. Like same idea, but just the visual storytelling was just poorly executed in that one scene in Korra. So I think it's another scene people point to say that she's a Mary Sue, because like, oh, it's just so convenient that this is able to happen. But it's like,
it's also convenient that
you're right and you're wrong. I guess I don't know.
Had the ocean spirit right there. But I agree that it's overall better execution. It's something my friend Callan Brown, who heads up Finalis, he always says that Korra had a higher ceiling than Airbender. Like if it executed on everything that it was trying to do, because it had loftier goals and I think deeper things that it was saying. If it hit on all of those, it would have been like a masterpiece, better than the original. But because of its execution not always being there, and that it kind of fumbled the back on some of the execution, is why it is not up there with Airbender as a cohesive, overarching story.
Yeah. Who did you say? Callum something?
Callan Brown. Well, I don't think he goes by Callan Brown on YouTube. Ready for is used to be his YouTube name. Now it's called Finalysis, like fan analysis, but like squished together.
That's clever. Okay. All right. I think that's everything I wanted to say. We're actually a little bit over time. Was there anything, any last notes you wanted to give?
That's it.
All right. Well, I had a really fun time. Let's do this again sometime.
Well, I mean, we have that event. I mean, I don't know if you're excited for the Airbender live action that's on Netflix. I'm not actually that excited, but I'm more so, which I'm making a video about like why I'm more excited. It has a lot to do with the Last of Us adaptation that just happened recently, and how it basically exposed it to a whole entire audience that never really even knew that Last of Us existed. I think the same thing could happen for, with the Netflix adaptation if it's done well. It doesn't even have to be like brilliant at all. I think if it's just good, like, or just like okay, it can go a whole long way of like really blowing out. Because I feel like for a long time the Avatar, Last Airbender, Korra franchise has always been like just below the tier of like, Marvel and Star Wars, Harry Potter, that kind of stuff. But it has the potential to be just as big as those properties. And I think, potentially with all the stuff, happening with Avatar Studios, we can finally get there. It can get the notoriety and the the super attention, because it has its attention. Like, people know about it and people really adore it, but I don't think it's like super, like on that stratosphere, that ultra stratosphere that it can get to.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope so. But yeah, I mean, yeah, we can definitely talk about that if you want to.
Well, I'm saying, like, I think we're having a live stream happening on the 17th of June. Because they're gonna have that live Netflix showing, and it's gonna be the first time we're gonna see. We don't even know what we're gonna see yet. We don't know if it's gonna be like a trailer, if we're gonna see some images, but we do know that the cast are going to present, like, on stage, like, this stuff. So it's gonna be pretty cool. Hoping it's pretty cool.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we can definitely talk about that. But I think that's everything I have. So and so I think I'll see you around. But send me those YouTube channels you were talking about. The
Oh yeah, for sure.
Air Prime, Airstream Live.
Oh yeah, you need to know, dude. He's like the best. He's really small, but Airstream Prime is easily the best Avatar YouTuber there is. Like, straight up.
Okay.
Like, no one is more informed than this guy. And
right.
Here, let me give you analysis too. I'm linking right now in the chat.
Okay, cool. And then there was the other one. Okay.
Yeah, I just sent it right now.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. Well, I think it's everything. So, and I'm like 10 minutes over time. So,
Sweet.
All right. Have a nice day, man.
All right. Peace. Bye.
Bye.
Once again, a special thank you to Antoine for helping to spread awareness. And again, if you want to help out, just check out the links below.